Hi guys, Stage Rat here, doing a video on my new musical theatre obsession, pretty much, Falsettos. If you're new to my channel, hi, I'm Stage Rat. I do a lot of videos on theatre and especially musical theatre, quite a bit of talking about Star Kids, reacting to shows, discussing shows. So if any of that sounds like your cup of tea, then please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the bell, because YouTube, give the video a like, give it a comment, be nice in the comments. Most people are on my channel, it's fantastic to see, but just, I always feel the need to remind people, just please be nice in the comments. And, you know, go and check out my other videos. Or not, I'm good either way. Apologies for this video being up so late. I had intended to have it up at some point in March because I was going to do like a whole punny thing in the title with like March of the Falsettos, and it was going to be a whole thing. Unfortunately, the video took way longer to script than I expected. If you've ever seen any of my other videos on this channel, you'll probably know I do not tend to script videos. So I was kind of completely unprepared for how long this would take, and also I knew that there was a lot in here that I wanted to talk about, so I thought, no, actually I need to try and form some kind of structure to this thing. But yes, it took, unfortunately, far longer to script than I was anticipating, and then I got hit with the flu, which means I couldn't film for about a week. So unfortunately this is going up in April, which means I'll have to find a new title for it, but whatever, it's fine. In February, I finally, after literally years, gave in to my friend's demands to watch Falsettos, the 2016 revival, and it was an experience. I'm already emotionally devastated. This is gonna be hell. Why are they so adorable? Literally everything about this is just ripping my heart out right now. Why do I do this to myself? And I knew kind of pretty much as soon as I watched it that I'd need to do a video on it, because honestly I have not stopped thinking about it. It's now been, I think, almost exactly a month since I first watched it. I have not stopped thinking about Falsettos as a show in that time, and literally I will just be going about my day and then all of a sudden my brain will just be like, once I was told that good men get better with age. We're just gonna skip that stage. And I will need to go and sob in a corner for an hour. So yes, I really just need to get this show out of my system. So hence this video. So Falsettos is about a guy called Marvin who basically right at the start of the show we learn that I divorced my wife, I left my child, and I ran off with a friend. But he's still wanting everything to be kind of like it was, just with the caveat that he is now living with this guy who is named Whizzer, 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 Whizzer. Like, seriously, who names their kid Whizzer? Anyway, not important. Obviously no one is happy about this arrangement, so his kid Jason starts acting up in an incredibly bad way.
If intelligence were the only criterion, then I really wouldn't need a psychiatrist, would I? No. Would I?
No.
Just because you failed as parents?
His ex-wife Trina is having a breakdown.
He's a queen, I'm a queen, where is my crown? I'm breaking down. I'm breaking down. My life's not pretty and my kid seems like an idiot to me.
And she ends up seeing Mendel, who is just like the world's worst psychiatrist.
Who is responsible?
Don't ask me questions, I'm frightened of questions.
and Marvin and Whizzer are in a really unhealthy relationship, and it's all just a complete mess.
Whizzer's supposed to always be here, making dinner, set to screw. That's what pretty boys should do. Check their hairlines, make the dinner, and love me.
Really, Act 1 is basically Marvin just needing to learn how to get his shit together in regards to all aspects of his life. Whizzer and Marvin end up breaking up because Marvin just can't handle losing at chess. Trina and Mendel get married, and Marvin just becomes the absolute worst. But then he and Jason start making up, so yay father-son bonding! It's kind of hard to know how to feel about that moment, honestly. Act 2 takes place 2 years later in 1981. Remember the date is important. And everyone's getting way too excited about Jason's bar mitzvah. We meet the two characters with by far the most healthy relationship in the show.
Look, it's a lesbian from next door.
Followed by her lover who's a lesbian from next door too.
And it turns out Jason can't play baseball until Whizzer shows up to demonstrate how you're actually meant to hold the bat. Marvin and Whizzer get back together because Marvin's learnt how to sort his shit out, and it turns out he's not nearly as grumpy at losing at racquetball as he is when he loses at chess. So Jason is relatively happy, barring the arguments with his parents about the bar mitzvah.
I don't want a bar mitzvah!
What do you mean you don't want a bar mitzvah? What do you mean you don't want a bar mitzvah? How do you think we feel about that?
Mendel and Trina are basically happy, the lesbians from next door are happy, Marvin and Whizzer are happy, and absolutely everything is fine and nothing bad happens.
Everything will be alright.
So, given that this takes place in 1981 in New York, with an emphasis on the gay scene, clearly things don't stay happy for very long.
Bachelors arrive sick and frightened. They leave weeks later unenlightened. We see a trend, but the trend has no name.
But I honestly can't talk about it without ugly crying, so if you don't know what happens, then please pause this video, go and watch the show, or listen to the show, or watch my reaction to the show and weep along with me. That's good too. One of the best things about having a cast of characters this small is that every single character can actually be developed as their own person and genuinely be interesting. I have nothing against shows with large casts of characters, but you can't deny in a show like Les Mis, for example, if you look at any given background barricade boy, so any of the students excluding Enjolras, Grantaire and Marius, they are not individually interesting or developed characters on the page. In performance, if the actor has done their homework and, read the book, then chances are they will be at least a little interesting because they'll add in certain traits. But in the musical, on the page, the Barricade Boys are essentially there to just be effectively a singular mass to back up Enjolras and then die. In Falsettos, literally every single character is, as I said, developed and distinct and interesting. Even a character like Cordelia, who, gets the least amount of stage time, which is a shame, but it has to go to someone, I guess. So I'm just gonna need to go ahead and break down every single character because it's one of the things that I'm obsessing over with regards to this musical. Cordelia and Charlotte are given the least amount to do throughout the show and are completely absent from Act 1. But when they appear in Act 2, they essentially serve to function as a foil for the relationship between Marvin and Whizzer, especially as that relationship stood in the first act and the much more healthy relationship that it develops into throughout Act 2. Cordelia and Charlotte have the same stereotypically gendered domestic relationship that Marvin was clearly trying to achieve with his relationships with both Trina and Whizzer. But the difference is that Cordelia and Charlotte have obviously come into this kind of relationship much more on their own terms, and it's clearly a more natural fit for both of them, whereas Marvin was constantly trying to force everyone else to fit his ideal mould for what his partner, whoever they happen to be at the time, should be. They also have moments of disagreement and have arguments, but these are resolved relatively quickly and by each of them opening up to the other.
Tales about stories that something bad is spreading around. Look, a virus has been found. Stories that go underground.
Cordelia may not be able to do anything substantial to help with the something bad that's happening, but Charlotte at least recognises that it's important Cordelia knows what's going on and is aware of exactly what it is that's upsetting her. And although Cordelia seems to be little more than comic relief throughout the show,
Nobody? Okay.
she's obliquely presented as a foil to Trina especially, both being the more domestic and nurturing role in their respective pairings, with a particular emphasis on the preparation of food as a potential means of coping with stressful situations, and demonstrates a hint of what Trina could have been had her life turned out in the manner she expected. Cordelia's efforts to cater a Jewish ceremony while not being Jewish herself and ultimately succeeding by the time of Jason's bar mitzvah demonstrates the length that she will go to in order to be a valuable member to the Pham family in her own right, while superficially not really bringing anything useful to the table. However, this naturally leads her to be both willing and able to lend support to the entire Pham family, while Charlotte, because of her job, has to primarily focus on Whizzer and Marvin specifically. Ultimately, if Marvin and Whizzer in Act 1 are an example of a completely destructive gay relationship, Charlotte and Cordelia in Act 2 are an example of a genuinely healthy and supportive gay relationship. I still wish they were given a little more to do though. So, I said it numerous times during the reaction, and I'll say it again here. Mendel is an absolutely awful psychiatrist. Though it's not necessarily because he has no advice to give, it's more that he just has a tendency to use everyone else's therapy sessions as a means of giving therapy to himself. His section in A Day in Falsetto Land, where we see what's implied to be a standard day in the lives of the characters partway through Act 2, is basically him focusing far more on just complaining about his own life and the disconnect he's feeling from the world at large, rather than focusing on providing any kind of substantial help to his patient.
And how does that make you feel, Diane?
Caroline.
Caroline!
Yes, my name is Caroline.
I don't get it. I've been left behind. Half my patients, yuppie pagans, modeled on the Ronald Reagans. Now the world is too pathetic, and I don't get it at all.
And he repeatedly acts the same way with both Marvin and Jason in Act 1.
Since the session's nearly through, tell me, what is going on with you?
Oh, so now you're interested in me?
Of course.
I'm embarrassed. It's not my responsibility to ask you, but I wonder if it's ever crossed your mind.
What do I say? Where do I look? Why do I laugh? How do I answer? Is it my mind? Love isn't free. Love isn't blind. What do I see?
Stop!
As a psychiatrist, his job is ultimately to provide care and therapy for his patients, regardless of his personal feelings on their various issues. Instead, Mendel is constantly allowing his personal feelings to completely overshadow and interfere with the quality of care he is able to offer.
At her very first session, she made quite an impression. Look, do you mind that? She was here to speak of Jason, and I find that I hope Jason acts out more, because there's a few more things we need explore.
But just like everyone else, the circumstances the characters eventually find themselves in require him to grow up and start out looking outside his own issues in order to lend his support to others. Starting when he lends his support to both Trina and Jason in the wake of Marvin's temper tantrum, rather than indulging in a cockfight as he had done earlier.
But nothing's impossible.
Look who's got power.
King of the losers.
At 80 an hour, he can bitch, I can stall.
I want it all.
In fact, it's more often than not the advice that he gives outside of the context of his job that turns out to be the most helpful. From becoming a mediator between Marvin and Trina and Jason regarding Jason's bar mitzvah.
Go ahead and kill your mother.
Not with guns, but kill your mother
Rather than humiliate her, killing your mother is the merciful thing to do.
Oh my God. Everyone hates his parents, now I see why. But in time, they'll cool out, and you'll think they were only fooling. It's a strange thing about parents. Push turns to shove. What was hate becomes more or less love.
Jason, please see a psychiatrist.
I'm a psychiatrist. Get lost.
To helping both Trina and Jason deal with the fact that Whizzer isn't getting any better, and exactly what that will mean for the dynamics of the family.
We can't be sure when he'll get better, when or if he'll ever get better.
Holding to the ground as the ground keeps shifting.
Trying to keep sane as the rules keep changing.
Keeping up my head as my heart falls
out
out
of
of
sight. Everything will be all right.
To ultimately becoming the backbone of the found family by the time Jason's bar mitzvah takes place.
Son of Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham, son of Marvin, son of Trina, son of Whizzer, son of Mendel.
And Godchild to the lesbians from next
Sing,
door.
oh sing, homosexuals, women with children, short insomniacs. We're a teeny tiny band. Lovers come and lovers go. Lovers live and die fortissimo. This is where we take a stand. Welcome to Falsetto Land.
So, can we all just agree that Trina deserves a hug? Like, the poor woman goes through so much in this show, it's unbelievable. When we first meet Trina, her life has effectively completely fallen apart and she is only barely hanging on and holding the pieces together. With none of the men in the first act acting like mature and sensible adults, it's effectively been left to her to attempt to clean up the mess that's been left behind almost entirely on her own.
It's crazy how they're acting. It's crazy my response. It's stupid how I love them. So dumb how I anticipate their wants. But as long as they amuse me, that alone is what's required. So I'll roar like I'm wired.
However, because it's obviously far too much to ask for one person to not only keep their own life going in the middle of a crisis, but also to help sort out the lives of 3 grown men and a 10-year-old child as well, she is constantly on the verge of completely breaking and isn't above releasing her frustrations at the situation she has found herself in, particularly onto Jason.
My life's not pretty and my kid seems like an idiot to me. You must exercise a devil, 'cause it inhabits Marvin's son. Please come to our house and talk a bit with Jason. It's a slight exaggeration, but he's sick in the head. Oh, sure. Sometimes you'll think he's wonderful, but he's wild. I'm sure he's Marvin's child.
She is largely unable to cope with the fact that not only has Marvin left her, but he left her for a man, and it's implied that she's, consciously or not, pushed these insecurities onto Jason, which has served to compound his own issues.
Don't make noise, but Daddy's kissing.
Petty, 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 petty.
I love my mother.
Why not me?
My father's a homo. My mother's not thrilled at all. Father homo. What about chromosomes? Do they carry? Well, they carry. Who's the homo now?
Her relationship with Mendel is born out of a rebound from her relationship with Marvin.
I've rethought my talks with Marv. One fact does emerge. I think I like his shrink. Mendel's not a maniac, and he's sweet, and he's warm, and he loves me so.
But despite this, it's clearly a relationship that truly benefits both of them, with Trina now having someone she feels she can turn to and gain support from, and the circumstances of the relationship forcing Mendel to begin his own process of growing up. By the time of Act 2, Trina is clearly in a much more stable place with regards to her own life, but is still unsure of her dynamic with Marvin, and then Whizzer once he re-enters the picture.
Marvin's back with Whizzer, just like how it was. If I don't like Whizzer, it's because my ex sure does. Why should that upset me? Sometimes I'm a lout. Mendel serenades and Jason calms me. Why should I be wilting when their precious love is not in doubt? Work it out.
Really, it's not until Whizzer falls ill that she's able to finally truly come to terms with everything that's happened between the 3 of them. And, in her own way, it causes her to start growing up as well, allowing herself to truly acknowledge how she feels, and from that catharsis, allowing herself the room to at least try and help the family through this objectively much more serious crisis as much as she can.
Everything will be all right. Everything will be all
Jason is essentially a boy who has to grow up far more quickly than he's ready for. In Act 1, he is struggling to deal with his new family dynamic, since being a child he has absolutely no control over anything that's happening to him, and responds by repeatedly lashing out at his parents.
Daddy is a prick.
What?
He said,
Yes?
Daddy isn't mine.
I could take you to the Jewish center.
Forget it. Just because you failed as parents.
And demonstrating very little regard for how his actions affect others.
I want to speak with Whizzer.
Speak with whom?
With Whizzer.
With Whizzer.
With Whizzer.
With Whizzer.
Oh my god.
All while seeking refuge in games of chess which he plays against himself, swapping the broader situation of his life in which he feels he has no control for one in which, no matter what, he is always in complete control of what happens and will always win. Despite Trina and Marvin's insistence that Jason see a psychiatrist, clearly initially being born more out of a projection of their own issues onto him, and an attempt to sidestep their own problems by focusing on their son, which Jason recognises and uses against them to exacerbate the issue by first refusing to go until hearing Whizzer's opinion.
Whizzer, do you think I should see a psychiatrist?
Absolutely, Jason.
Okay, I'll go.
And then encouraging Mendel's relationship with Trina.
Mr. Mendel, as regarding your intentions to my mother, are they everything a woman would desire? Her hand is ready. It only needs a ring. This is how you make a marriage proposal.
It ultimately proves to be beneficial to Jason, as Mendel repeatedly helps Jason to see that it's okay to just accept that he is a child, and to take joy and happiness where he can find it. Jason is the only character who doesn't really substantially change between Act 1 and Act 2, as despite now being more comfortable around Marvin, his frustrations with his parents concerning their arguments about his bar mitzvah and later his fears and concerns about Whizzer's failing health still manifest themselves as lashing out at his parents, even when control is handed back to him with regards to whether or not he wants his bar mitzvah to even take place.
What have I done that they ruined my bar mitzvah? Stop! I don't want a bar mitzvah, okay? I don't want a bar mitzvah, but I don't want it. Nothing that gives them pleasure I'll do.
If you think it's bust, then it's probably just as well.
Can't we wait till Whizzer gets better? Can't we wait till he's out? So bar mitzvah should be all about good friends close at hand. Don't you understand?
Jason, please. What we'll do is your decision.
Finally, now it's all my decision. Like it's my bar mitzvah. Just like nothing happened. Hell, let's have a party. Just like nothing happened. Why don't you make this dumb decision yourselves, okay? Why don't you make this dumb decision yourselves?
We'll have the bar mitzvah.
No.
Then we'll cancel the bar mitzvah.
No.
His bar mitzvah ultimately proves to be far more literal about its purpose of celebrating Jason growing from a boy into a man, as the ceremony itself ends up providing the impetus for Jason's growth into maturity with regards to his behaviour. After worrying primarily about the bar mitzvah in the childish terms of who to invite and whether his parents will embarrass him,
Would they come though if they were invited and not laugh at my Hebrew and not laugh at my father and his friends?
Track 2!
to then rejecting the calls for it to be his decision whether or not to cancel the ceremony in the wake of Whizzer's failing health. Jason eventually comes up with a compromise.
Suddenly it all came clear. I said, let's have my bar mitzvah here. Surprise!
And when Whizzer ends up collapsing partway through the ceremony, his response is no longer to lash out or face the situation with anger and confusion, but to seek comfort with those he still has around him. The final image of Jason in the show is him placing his king chess piece on Whizzer's gravestone, not only fulfilling his earlier promise to Whizzer to let him win, but also symbolising the completion of his growth from Act 1.
My father says that love is the most beautiful thing in the world. I think games are. I think chess is the most beautiful thing. Not love.
Him choosing to surrender his king represents his last move from seeking refuge in games where he largely has control over what happens, to opening himself up to the possibility of love, even though he knows that he has no control over it, and that it is something that might bring him pain in the future. Throughout the show, and even before the start of the action in Act 1, Whizzer essentially acts as the catalyst for the development that all the other characters go through. Of the 5 characters present in Act 1, he is initially presented as being the one who is most aware of who he is as a person and what he feels he wants from his life, and, as such, he is often set apart from the other 4, both through the staging and blocking, which often sees him placed on his own while the others are in groups of 2 or 3, and through his music, which utilises much more dynamic harmonies than the other characters have.
We got our miracle. His name is Mendel. Passion dies. Passion dies.
And this had better come to a stop. Marvin, why? Marvin, try. Marvin, bed. This had better come to a this had better come to an
This had better come to an end.
This had better come to an end.
His security and confidence in himself is presented as being simultaneously threatening to the other characters, especially Marvin and Trina, and something to be admired, and the goal the others strive to achieve within themselves. However, as Act 1 progresses and the issues and general dysfunction of his and Marvin's relationship grow deeper and more clear to the audience, it becomes obvious that in many ways Whizzer is just as much in a state of arrested development as everyone else, as his arguments with Marvin become increasingly childish and petulant.
What should I do now?
Where? There.
How should I behave myself? Chess ain't how your boyfriend thinks.
This game stinks.
Let me win.
Yes, sir.
Please?
Yes.
Great.
Wait.
Whizzer wins.
Wait.
Whizzer wins.
Wait.
Checkmate.
Throughout Act 1, both Whizzer and Marvin repeatedly taunt each other with the notion that neither of them truly needs the other, and the relationship between them means nothing except having someone around to both argue and have sex with. And they both repeatedly dare each other to bring the relationship to an end.
Leave me.
Love me.
Don't be a fool.
This is going nowhere and fast. Whizzer, this little thing that we have will not last.
While it's difficult to know for sure whether Marvin is being serious when he fetches Whizzer's suitcase after Whizzer beats him at chess, or whether it's just another bluff and he's not truly expecting Whizzer to take him up on it, Whizzer has clearly identified the destructive nature of the relationship, largely driven by Marvin's controlling nature.
Whizzer's supposed to make the dinner, be a patsy, lose at chess, always bravely acquiesce, clip the coupons, make the dinner, and love him. This has gotta come to a stop.
This has gotta come
Marvin,
to a stop.
This has been a lousy but fabulous flop.
Anyone understand? All I want's a kiss. Anyone understand?
Don't start explaining, I'm sick of explaining.
This had better come to a stop. Whizzer now, Whizzer chow, Whizzer bed.
This had better come to a this had better come to an
This had better come to an end. This had better come to an end.
And makes the decision not just to leave Marvin, but also to reevaluate exactly what it is that he wants from his life, coming to the conclusion that he wants a proper relationship with someone who's committed to him. And, while he denies being in love with Marvin,
Ask me if I love him. It depends on the day. Do I love him? No.
it's clear that it's the fact that Marvin is unable to both admit and demonstrate his love for Whizzer that has caused the relationship to fall apart more than anything else.
How do I start not to love you?
Whizzer has grown up at this point and chooses to leave the childish world inhabited by the others behind, at least for a time. Although Whizzer is initially reluctant to enter into another relationship with Marvin,
When he bats, he looks good.
Just remember, he's psychotic.
it's clear almost right from the moment they meet again that during their time apart, they've both individually come to the conclusion that what they truly want from life is to be with each other, and both are finally at a stage where they can admit it, not just to themselves, but to each other as well.
Do you know?
Down the alley.
All I want is you.
Low drive. Ceiling shot.
Anything you do is
Into the corner.
right. Yes, it's
Four
all
walls.
right. No. All I want is you. Do you know?
My life
All I want
is.
is
Do you know how great my life is?
Whizzer's sickness and eventual death as an early casualty of the HIV/AIDS epidemic is what essentially serves as the driving force for every character to reach the final stage of their development, as the largely unknown nature of the illness at that time means that everyone is thrown into the deep end with regards to knowing how they should respond, and needs to step up and put aside their own personal issues for the sake of supporting and caring for each other. Once again, Whizzer seems to be the one ahead of the curve, as he appears to largely accept just how sick he truly is, while everyone else is trying to be optimistic.
Today you seem to be on the way to recovery. Oh, Whizzer, I want to applaud.
We don't know what time will bring.
I have a clue.
I have too.
Let's look like we haven't.
And, once he's given explicit confirmation of the terminal nature of his illness, he immediately recognises and admits the futility of pretending otherwise.
Let's get on with living while we can and not play dumb. Death's gonna come. When it does, screw the nerves. I'll be eating hors d'oeuvres. It's the roll of the dice and no crime. You gotta die sometime. Give me the balls to orchestrate a graceful leave. That's my reprieve, to go out without care, my head high in the air. It's the last little mountain I'll climb.
When he finally does die, it is safe in the knowledge that he truly belongs as a part of this found family, and that he is genuinely loved not only by Marvin, but that he's come to be loved by everyone else in their own ways as well. And, most importantly, that the nature of everyone's development and bonding together during his sickness means that all of them, but especially Jason, who has repeatedly sought and taken comfort in Whizzer's guidance throughout the show, and Marvin, who now has the support of his own family as well as the friendship of Cordelia and Charlotte, will ultimately be alright without him. And when he dies, it is just as he wished, on his own terms, unafraid, and surrounded by the genuine and unashamed love of those he cares about the most. Although Falsettos is in many ways an example of an ensemble show, Marvin is the closest we have to an actual main character, since the story follows his journey from being a highly selfish, controlling and inconsiderate man at the start of Act 1, to becoming a genuinely loving and supportive partner, father and friend who is no longer afraid to express his true feelings to those he loves by the end of the show. When we first meet Marvin, he is trying to give us the impression that he knows exactly who he is and what he wants.
I want a tight-knit family. I want a group that harmonizes. I want my wife and a kid and friend to pretend a time will mend our pain.
But it very quickly becomes clear that, even if this is the case, he has absolutely no idea how to go about demonstrating and achieving it. He has a very firmly fixed and traditional view of what relationships are, casting himself in the stereotypically male figure in his relationships with both Trina and Whizzer.
While I put the steak in,
I bring home the bacon and Whizzer's supposed to always be here, making dinner, set to screw. That's what pretty boys should do.
And, while he seems to be under the impression that both Trina and Whizzer naturally fit into the stereotypically female figure in the relationship, it's obvious that neither are happy about that being their role, and that Marvin has effectively forced them into a relationship template that was already rapidly becoming severely outdated by 1979.
Chop, 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 chop. I chopped it, I served his food. The jackass forced me.
chop, 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 chop.
And still the bastard divorced me.
Chop, 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 chop.
However, Marvin simply doesn't notice, or perhaps chooses to ignore, their discomfort with the arrangement, focusing instead on what he feels is important to himself. While Jason's issues with Marvin ultimately turn out to have little to do with his father as a person and more to do with his unfounded insecurities that homosexuality is hereditary, Marvin exacerbates the rift in their relationship by using Jason as someone on whom he can project his own issues, and eventually admits that he primarily saw Jason as merely being an extension of himself and not as a person in his own right.
I never wanted to love you. I only wanted to see my face in yours.
Similarly, while Whizzer repeatedly fails to act in a mature way throughout their crumbling relationship, it's increasingly clear that the relationship was rooted in an unhealthy dynamic from the start, with Marvin seeing himself as the only one able to call the shots, while Whizzer simply has to do what he's told. When Trina begins seeing Mendel and then gets engaged to him, we see the extent to which Marvin allows his temper to cloud any sense of rational thought. Since he left Trina and is still in a relationship with Whizzer at the point that Trina and Mendel become engaged, he has no real reason to be as angry at the situation as he gets, except for the fact that his inflated ego simply can't allow him to process the fact that Trina no longer needs him, and is in fact arguably better off at that moment without Marvin in her life at all. He sees Mendel as essentially taking his place in the family unit of Trina and Jason, while conveniently ignoring the fact that he basically forfeited his place as the head of that family unit the moment he chose to divorce Trina, leave Jason, and be with Whizzer. Ironically, his anger at losing one family unit ultimately ends up costing him the only other family unit he has at that moment, as he once again takes his frustrations out on Whizzer, who is finally pushed to breaking point and ends their relationship. With the only thing left to him being his temper, Marvin lashes out at Mendel and Trina, literally. And it's only this that appears to make him realise the extent of what his consistent refusal to compromise and take others' feelings into account has cost him. And, after one last attempt to save face and remain steady in his belief that he's still in the right, an attempt that is half-hearted at best.
It really killed me when you took those vows. Don't misunderstand, I'm in demand. And anyhow, we're through. I never wanted, I never wanted to love you.
He finally begins the process of growing by actively choosing to open up to Jason, admitting his mistakes and choosing to give guidance rather than demanding it be given to him. By the start of Act 2, Marvin has clearly already substantially grown and learned from his mistakes in Act 1, as, despite it being portrayed as an unwelcome intrusion into the fun and carefree happiness of the so-called falsetto land of 1981, he's reminding everyone that
it's about time to grow up, don't you think?
And even his recognition of the fact that his behaviour until this point has been less mature than that of his now 12-and-a-half-year-old son, signals that he is at least aware of the journey he needs to take, even if he's not quite at the point of actually having achieved that maturity.
It's about growing up, getting older, living on a lover's shoulder. Learning love is not a crime. It's about time.
He is still regularly arguing with Trina, making fun of Mendel, not taking Jason's feelings into account, and, when Whizzer turns up at Jason's baseball game, reverts to almost childish teasing in order to get his attention. However, all of this immaturity is noticeably more light-hearted than the similar behaviour that he displayed in Act 1, indicating that, at the very least, he is no longer so completely unaware of how what he does affects others. His second relationship with Whizzer misses the fundamentally unhealthy dynamic of the first, as the two seem to develop a genuine friendship as well as being sexual partners. Marvin has learned that he can't just expect Whizzer to fit into the mould he had initially designed for him, and is clearly allowing Whizzer to take a more equal stance in the relationship. His anger at losing a game of chess in the first act, as well as his frustration with Whizzer not taking the game seriously, being noticeably contrasted with his annoyed but ultimately playful response to losing a game of racquetball, and now seeming fine with neither he nor Whizzer taking the game seriously. He is now even able to admit his love and desire to be with Whizzer above all else, again contrasted with his earlier apparent desires in Act 1.
I want it all. Do you know? All I want is you.
Whizzer's illness further increases Marvin's growth as it completely shatters his traditional view of how relationships should be. After what's assumed to be decades of trying to prove that he is the stereotypical man in regards to his relationships, as soon as Whizzer falls ill, Marvin instantly switches primarily to the more stereotypically feminine role as the caregiver. that it's not even a question in Marvin's mind that this should be the case, and despite his attempts to keep up a light-hearted front for Whizzer, increasingly breaks down and admits just how badly the ordeal is affecting him, shows plainly just how far he has come from being a man focused on projecting a hyper-masculine front as he was at the start of the show. By the time of Jason's bar mitzvah, and armed with the knowledge that he is potentially due to face the same fate as Whizzer,
Something that kills. Something infectious. Something that spreads from one man to another.
his focus is entirely on the people around him, especially Whizzer and Jason. The comment made that
Don't know why, but he looks like Marvin.
indicates not only that Jason is maturing and taking the step from boy to man, but also that Marvin is finally demonstrating the same level of emotional vulnerability and openness that Jason has displayed throughout the show. Indeed, this comment is followed by Marvin expressing the fullest extent of his love for Jason that we've seen, and he does so without any hint of embarrassment or reservation.
You hold my dreams, kid. I burst at the seams 'cause of you.
This continues after Whizzer's death, as he freely and openly expresses his feelings, not only with regards to Whizzer dying, but with regards to their entire relationship, again doing so freely and without embarrassment or reservation. At Whizzer's funeral, he allows Mendel to take the lead, and despite initially standing and grieving alone, eventually comes to seek the comfort of his friends and family, sharing the depths of his pain with them and allowing them to provide support to him, proving that he's finally truly learned the lessons he laid out at the start of Act 2. So now, having gone through all of that, I'm just going to go ahead and leave this video here. I realised as I was scripting the video, and even more when I was just editing this whole bit, if I was to try and fit everything that I wanted to say into one video, it would probably end up being around 2 hours long, and I know neither my face nor my voice is nearly appealing enough to make all of you sit through something that long. Hopefully part 2 will be posted at some point in the not too distant future. If you liked anything about this video, please hit the like button. If you have any observations of your own that I missed, or anything you want to disagree with me on or anything you want me to elaborate on, feel free to leave a comment. Just be nice in the comments. And yes, hopefully part 2 of God knows how many, hopefully it won't be more than 3, will be up at some point, so hopefully I will see you all then. Bye.